Hi, I'm Mayce.
And I'm Missy.
We're best friends
and business partners. And each week, we're going to bring you a quote that inspires us, and we're going to talk about it.
Join us as we break down our favorite impactful messages for leadership and share how you can apply them to lead with confidence and purpose.
Get ready for a fun and authentic journey into leadership, life, and everything in between.
Well, hey, bestie, happy Tuesday.
Hey, bestie, happy Tuesday to you. Have you ever noticed how life sometimes has a funny way of like closing one door before you can even see the next one?
Yes, and in the moment, like sometimes it feels like everything's falling apart, doesn't it?
It
But
does.
Like what I've realized, and maybe you have and our listeners have, when you look back on those moments, those are the things that often become really great turning points that like changes everything.
Yeah, like new roles, new seasons, new opportunities can emerge because while we change the feeling from uncomfortable to comfortable, potential happens, right?
Yeah.
And it can bring out the best in us.
Yeah, I don't know if you know the song Closing Time by Semisonic. If I sang it, which I'm not going to, you might know
I know it.
Okay.
I know
but
it.
The one line, and I love the song only really for this line, it says, every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. And
Yes.
I just think that's so powerful.
I love it too. It can give you hope.
All right. So this perspective, like changing and transition, we're going to break it all down with our guest today, Navid Nazemian. And before we get too ahead of ourselves, which we could tend to do, we are going to introduce Navid, welcome him to the show, and he'll talk a little bit about himself. Yeah?
Yeah. So Navid, welcome to the podcast today. Go ahead, share with our audience more about you. What do they need to know?
Sure. Hello, ladies. I am stoked to have this conversation with you today. I'm a former HR executive turned coach and also a best-selling author.
So good. What's the name of your book?
The book is titled Mastering Executive Transitions, The Definitive Guide.
This is going to be so good
because
you focus on helping people transition in their careers, right? Like that's really what the key is. So we found a quote. This quote is by our favorite, I don't know if it's like author or penist or what you say, but our favorite, like of all time, Anonymous. And Anonymous has said this: what feels like the end is often the beginning. And I think that there's some beauty in that. And I think it is perfect to talk about with Navid. So Missy, Navid, let's talk about it.
So Navid, let's jump right in. When you hear this quote, what comes to mind?
Oh, this reminds me of trying to write the final chapter for my book. And here's a little secret to share, only just between the three of us. It took me 7 years to write this wonderful book. It was harder than anything else I have done in my life. And I have accomplished quite a few incredible tasks. So the last 90 days in an executive's life are essentially unexplored. And the reason I say that with such confidence is that in the year 2021, which was the last year of me doing the research and wrapping things up and shipping my manuscript to my publisher in New York City, I spent, there was no ChatGPT available at that time. I spent a good part of my day on Google and searching for various other different things. And when you were to type into Google at the time, how to be most effective in your first 90 days in a new executive role, at the time, you got more than 5 billion search results, which was quite a lot. Now, if you were to only change the word first with last, you get less than 1 million search results, which essentially means that this is a topic that is completely unexplored. And that brings me to this very famous quote from Anonymous, which means that if you think of executive transitions as a process, it always starts with taking the baton from someone who has been there. And for the person who is the person who is passing over the baton, to make sure that they do it properly and hopefully a little easier on the incoming exec than they had faced when they went through the same transition.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, we do a lot of work inside companies, Navid, and what we know oftentimes is that sometimes passing that baton is clunky, right?
Yes.
It's not as easy as a lot of people want it to. And oftentimes we see this a lot, that people are promoted because in their current role, they're amazing, or they always show up on time, or they're always hitting their numbers, or they're always hitting their targets. But they're not always given the right tools to be successful in their new role.
That's
so
right.
Why do you think, in your experience, why do you think so many organizations promote leaders into these roles without giving them a roadmap for success or without giving them the right tools to do this new job?
Well, I wish I had a clear answer to that, but there are a few theories I can share as to why I believe this happens. The first one is it's the functional or technical competencies that gets you hired into the C-suite.
Right.
Yes.
And pretty quickly on the back end of that big promotion of yours, it's the lack of the so-called soft skills that gets you fired pretty quickly on the back end of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons. The second reason is what my good mentor, Dr. Marshall Goldsmith, says it much more eloquently than I could ever do. He has written 42 books, by the way, and only one out of those books has outsold the other 41. And that book is titled, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And I think there's something very compelling about the fact that you have done this previously. Let's assume I take my own example. I was an accomplished HR leader, and I only moved from one company to another. I moved from a company called Adidas to this other great company called GE, General Electric at the time. And the big mistake that I did at the time was to take out my good old playbook and try to play it all over again in the new company. And guess what? None of that landed because this new company has a culture, a leadership fabric, and a very different definition of what great looks like for them.
Yeah.
And so there are many reasons why this is getting in the way, but I assume the biggest reason is that companies are essentially investing a huge sum in the selection process. And as and when the best person has been selected, they sort of hope that this individual is going to be succeeding.
Like cross their fingers. Hopefully it works.
They were good on paper. Let's hope it works out, right?
Yes, they've done this before.
Yeah. That's good.
What are some of the biggest mistakes in all of this, billion document research you've done? What are some of the biggest mistakes that leaders make during their first 90 days in a new position?
Ooh, that's such a good question. I don't know that we ever asked a question like that before, like so specific about the first 90 days, but obviously I know why you asked it because he just talked about all this research.
Yeah.
Yes. So the first thing is actually relying on the first 90 days is the biggest mistake. And allow me by explaining why that is.
Sure.
Look, it's a very popular book. It's the other book that's selling in the onboarding category pretty well, but it's dated 2003, so it's very old by now. And so my double diamond framework that I give to the world in my book has 7 phases, of which only one, that's phase number 2, deals with the first 90 days. And phase number 1, which I call Discover, looks at minus 90 to day 0. There are many concrete things that an executive can start to do before they are in the position. This is one of the reasons you ask me why, what happens during the first 90 days, what goes wrong. Actually, it precedes or it starts before the first day in a job.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, look, I don't know what sports category you're interested in. Just name me one.
Fashion.
Runway.
On the beach.
Runway.
Okay, fashion. I love a good challenge. Let's stay on the catwalk. Can you imagine if you or whoever is the model that is supposed to walk on this catwalk is a little out of shape, right? The day before the big show with Louis Vuitton. Now, arguably, it's a little late to start to get into the shape
Right. This can't
on
be the
day
first
one
time.
on the
You can't,
catwalk.
right. You can't ever
Yes.
walk in heels the very
That's
first
what
time
I
you're
was
walking
thinking,
this
heels.
catwalk.
They've
Yeah.
been a
Which
sandal model and now
A
they've
flip
got
flop girl.
heels.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
which is what the first 90 days suggests. Sit on your
Yes.
hands, wait patiently, and then start to
Wow.
run around like crazy. And
Yeah.
again, if that figure isn't quite what you would like it to be, well, it's called preseason in every
Right.
professional category. And I'm sure the models
Yes.
on the
Yes.
catwalks have their preseason. They know the big show is coming up
Yeah.
2 months down the line.
Right.
That means no more chocolate ice cream, no more, this and that. Going to the gym regularly and doing what you need to do in order to show up right on data.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
Yes.
you're not getting your beach body ready on July 4th. Like you had to be
Our
doing that.
listeners are rolling right
Yeah.
now at this
Well,
analogy.
no,
But
I
it
think
is a
it's
good one,
great.
isn't
It
it?
is good. I love that it could go into any industry. That's the whole point with this podcast, is it doesn't
Yes.
matter what industry,
That's right.
it's going to be relevant. So let me ask you this, Navid. With transition comes change. And most people don't like change, right? Or they have some resistance to change. So, from a leader's perspective, how do you balance making changes, maybe by hiring new people or that transition? How do you balance making the changes while still honoring the culture and the people that are already in place?
absolutely. That's another great question. Look, in my book, I speak about a particular individual. I've never met him, but he made all the rookie mistakes a group chief executive should never have done. Now, one of the things he did was because he was brought in with that mandate. The board of directors, this is Hewlett Packard, by the way,
Okay.
a very successful company in their own right. And the name of the gentleman is Dr. Leo Apotheker. So he was brought in with one mandate only. Look, HP was pretty successful in the PC business, that's personal computers, laptops, and the like. They were the number one in the world in the printing business.
Mhm.
Any printer 10 years
Right.
ago most likely would have been from HP, whether laser,
Right.
inkjet, whatever the technology. They were very good in the server business and they had many more things going for them. So they brought him in with one idea and one mandate. And his mandate was, look, if we look left to Google, and if we look to our right, Apple, they are much more aggressive, much more agile, much more nimble tech players. We are more like a Microsoft and we are a bit of a dinosaur and we really want to avoid dying as a successful dinosaur. Now, he heard that and he went all in. And by the way, he came from this other aggressive tech company called SAP. So in his first town hall meetings with thousands of employees in the room, thousands others dialed in, he started to badmouth the current culture of HP and saying what a poor culture it is, how it must change. And by the way, look at this shiny other culture called SAP and how we all ought to move into that direction. Now,
Mm.
you don't need a PhD in change management to know that that is unlikely to produce a great
Right.
level of followership or
Right.
engagement for that
Right.
matter. So, in my book, I speak about earning the right to bring about culture change. And
Mm.
imagine the same situation, same individual, only different approach. If you had hired me or someone like myself, and I would have said, okay, Leo, how about in your next town hall, you ask these 3 questions. What are the top 2 or 3 behaviors or traits that have served us well in the past and will continue to serve us well into the next 10 years?
Love
Right.
Name
that.
them, use a Menti, you can type them online, and the tool is going to capture. Second question, what are 2 or 3 of top behaviors or things we have never considered doing, but we must start doing them because they will certainly help our leading into the future?
Yeah.
And
Mm.
then the third question, most important one, what are 2 or 3 behaviors or traits
So we
that
have to
may
start.
have served us well in the past, but certainly are not fit for
Right.
future? Now, imagine
Yes.
if he collected that insight then came back after a month or two to the worldwide HP colleagues and said to them, these are the top two things we will start to demonstrate because you have said so. These are the
Yes.
two or three things we will stop to do because you have told us so. And these are the two or three things we need to continue to demonstrate.
So
Now,
good.
what will be the level of buy-in? What will be the
Yeah.
level of engagement? How much more successful would that change program be
I
than the one that you tried?
So
I
good. It would
recently
increase
posted,
significantly.
yeah, I recently posted something very similar, Navid, on LinkedIn because most companies are not even doing that. Missy and I talk a lot about slowing down to go fast. This asking anyone, like if anyone is listening right now, get out your pen and write down what Navid just said. Like,
Yes.
stop, start, continue. It is a simple formula that companies around the globe, or I should say, successful companies implement. I mean, if you look
Yes.
at successful companies in their meetings, in their huddles, it's not that complicated. But when you're right, when you have people coming in or in new roles and they're like, okay, we're stopping everything because nothing's working. Yeah, there's some things that are probably working.
Yes.
So I love that because
Yes.
I, not that long ago, posted about it.
That's right. Well, let me ask you this, Navid, because sometimes the best person for a new role is not with doesn't come from within the organization. And boy, that can get messy if it's not handled
Yeah.
right. So what advice would you give someone who's been promoted internally versus someone who's coming into an organization from the outside?
Absolutely. So firstly, the failure rate on average is 40%, meaning out of 10 executive appointments, sadly, 4 are unsuccessful and they don't
Wow.
make it.
Really?
That's a
Now,
big number.
it is. And if you wanted to double click on that 40%, you will actually see that the promotion rate from within is a little less risky and prone to
Yeah.
failure. So depending on which study you look at, it's 33 to 37%. And those external highs are anywhere between 43 to 47%.
Yes.
So in other words, it's significantly more risky to join an organization at the very top from the outside than from the inside.
And
So
we
that's
have
just
seen
to
it
acknowledge.
play out in real life.
Well,
Wow.
it's hard to gain trust quickly and you're
Yeah.
submersing yourself into a culture. And I think the example you just gave with HP was so clear. Let me ask you this. In your role, with what you do with your coaching clients, how do you help leaders let go of who they were? Kind of like what we were talking about earlier with Marshall. How do you help leaders let go of who they were so they really can become who this new role requires them to be?
Oh, I love that.
Yes. Yes. So one particular tool I use is from DDI. This is Development Dimensions International. And they've surveyed over 4,600 leaders at various levels of leadership. And what they have then created is a visual image of a typical mix of skills and activities at each leadership level. And if you were to look at the top layer, they've colored those activities differently.
Sure.
Every one of these 3 layers, this is first time management, early management layer, first leadership level, middle level to senior level, and then the top executive level. Now, you can already see just by looking at the colors that it takes a very different breed to succeed at the exec level than it takes at the middle to senior management level.
Absolutely.
And that tool is the beginning of a conversation between me and the coaching client to say, okay, Missy, assuming Missy were to become the CEO of Vogue, the magazine.
That's right. That's right.
Missy, what would you need to demonstrate now in your new position that you may or may not have demonstrated in the past one? From the interviews you have conducted with key stakeholders, you have met the chair of the board, you have met the incumbent CEO or the chief editor, I guess is the name, the job title of the individual lady. Whatever, intel you have collected so far, how might you want to leverage that to make sure that you know everything you need to know in order to show up differently in the
So
new
good.
position? And by the way, it's completely human nature that we try to repeat what's made us successful previously. I do not blame anyone for doing that. It's just that insight plus taking a pause to really think strategically about How do I need to show a different set of
Yes.
skills and activities in the new position that may or may not be different from
So
mine?
good. It's reflecting, right? It's
Yeah.
taking that time to reflect and ask those hard questions. So for leaders listening today, Navid, who are considering a career change or stepping into a bigger role, what's one mindset shift that they need to make before they start, before that day one?
Yeah, I guess I would have to repeat what Marshall says here, which is what got you here won't get you there. Please do not assume just because you have been successful previously that you know this the magic sauce, secret sauce to every executive step up. Chances are you are missing out a lot of data points. And so again, always be curious, always be humble, always go in with the learner attitude or a beginner mindset.
So
It kind of reminds me of parenting. Like, could you imagine parenting a teenager the same way that you parent a toddler? Like, you can't. You have to almost abandon everything that you learned as a toddler mom, as an infant mom, to navigate this teenager. Okay, what would you tell, Navid, someone who's listening and they feel like they're at the end of something? They don't quite have their mind wrapped around maybe where they're going, but they're ready to jump off the bus, not off a mountain or, the bridge, just off the bus. They're jumping off the bus into something new. But what would you tell them if they feel like they're at the end of something?
Yes. So that's the last chapter of my book, what we, discussed right at the beginning of this podcast, which is, again, rather than giving anyone cookie cutter kind of, approaches, what I do instead is leaving them with 10 reflective questions to think about and then share with the incoming executive.
Yeah, we love
Some
that.
of those, just to give away 2 or 3, just to give you a sense of what I'm talking about here is, if I had 3 more years in this role, which key decisions would I want to make?
That is a powerful question.
I am not taking because I know I will be stepping down in 6 or 10 months from now.
That is a great question.
Second question is, if I had 3 more years in this role, which team members would I change and why? Right? This is my leadership team. I've grown with them. I've made some changes in the past, and I know what they're really good at. Which doesn't mean that 3 years from now, every single member is still fit for purpose for what I would ask them to deliver. Right. And so that's the second question. And then the third question is, being in this role the long time that I have been, what advice would I have given to my early self in the same position? And just those 3 things are out of the 10 questions that I suggest. Yeah. The incoming executive sits down with the old one, and they have this conversation among themselves as to
so good.
Well, as we've been talking about transition, I think it is a great transition right here into our big takeaway for the week. So listeners, if you take only one thing from this week's episode, let it be this. Every ending creates space for growth. And it's all about your perspective, right? Like whether it's leaving a role, taking on a promotion, or entering a new organization, transitions can feel uncomfortable, right? Because you're leaving behind what's familiar. But those moments often become that catalyst for your greatest professional and personal growth.
So good. The most successful leaders don't see change as something happening to them. They see it as something they can intentionally navigate. And the way you approach uncertainty often determines what comes next. So Navid, this has been incredible. Thank you so much. So we want you to share, of course, the name of the book again and where listeners can find it. And then if there is another way that they can stay in contact with you, share that with them as well.
For sure. So the name of my book is Mastering Executive Transitions, The Definitive Guide, available anywhere you can buy books from. And LinkedIn is the only social media platform that I have a meaningful presence on. I actually manage my own account, meaning if anyone hit me up, sent me a connection invite or a message, I actually respond. I do not have a VA or a bot.
Yeah, us too.
was
I love
managing
how you
data.
said like meaningful because there are so many social media places out there.
Yes.
So I love that you said meaningful, like you show up there with
Yeah.
meaning. I love that.
Okay, as we wrap up, we have to ask you a question that we ask all our guests. What is your favorite leadership quote, Navid?
Oh, one of my most favorite leadership quotes is from a gentleman called Nassim Taleb. And
Mm.
he said very famously in his book and later on in keynotes, invest in preparedness, not in prediction.
Ooh, I
Ooh,
like it. And
I like
listeners,
it too.
if you have a favorite leadership quote, send it our way and we may spotlight it on a future episode.
That's right. And we'll be back next week with another quote and more leadership insights. And you know what we're going to do? We're
We're
going
gonna
to
talk
talk
about
about
it.
it. Thank you,
Bye. Bye,
Navid.
bestie.
Bye,
Bye,
Mayce.
Navid. Thank you
Bye,
so much.
Navid. We want to thank you for listening. If you're enjoying this podcast, please show us some love by clicking the 3 dots to download the podcast. Leave us a 5-star rating on your podcast app and talk about it with other leaders to help them find the show from any of the major podcast apps. We'd love for you to follow us on social media too. Impactful with an M _ messages on Instagram and Impactful Messages on LinkedIn.